I know it's a loss if the guy doesn't play.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
I mean, I was salty about that. Oh, well. What can you do? I've only got him at 1.5 touchdowns through the air.
All right, my friends, it is that time once again. A little Friday night football action, 4-game slate, college football world. This is Awesemo.com, CFB DFS live before lock. I am Ben Raza. I am joined, as I always am each and every week, by my friend and co-host, Matt Kajeski. Matt, we've got a little 4-game slate, a little half-hour action here. A lot to break down. How you feeling on this Friday night?
I'm feeling great. 4 games. We're starting to get our weekday college football, which is my absolute favorite. We've got a Wednesday game next week. So these Wednesday, Thursday, Friday slates, they're some of my favorites to break down.
I know you do love them. A lot of edge to be had. I love small slates. We really get to dive into the games. And certainly before we do, we want to give a shout out to our friends at PrizePicks, sticking with us all college football season, sponsoring the show. If you have not been over there and you've not checked out their daily prop-based contest, they are so easy to play and they're offering a fantastic deposit bonus. All you're doing, you're getting lines and you're really choosing over and under. You can do picks, 2, 3, 4, or 5 players available. And then you're going to get a multiplier based on how many you get correct. You can get up to 10 extra entry fees over there. And it's not just college football. They've got NBA. They've got baseball while it's still going. Certainly the NFL. Hoops is starting. Cannot wait to check that out. Go download the app in the App Store or on Google Play and make your first deposit using the promo code Awesemo. And you're going to get an instant match deposit bonus of up to $100. Ton of plays on the board for today, for tomorrow. Matt, I'm going to highlight a couple tonight. The first one, and of course, we're going to talk about this game in depth, but the Clemson quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, he's only got 3 passing touchdowns on the year through 5 games. His PrizePicks prop for passing touchdowns is at 2. So you could push, but I still think I lean under there.
I lean under as well. Just looking back at my projections, he's at 1.5 for me. Part of that comes down to a really low total game overall. When they are scoring touchdowns, historically, they're around 40% through the air, 60% on the ground. So you just don't have a lot of room for error on that. And when you're getting like a half a touchdown in value, I think that's one you can look to the under.
On the other side of it, though, I've got to ask you, this is your account, Garrett Schrader. Can he get loose? His rushing prop is at 57.5. We know he's probably going to take some sacks here and there, but at the same time, this guy's volume on the ground is so immense. He's coming off a 29 carry, $178 performance against Wake. I kind of lean over even against Clemson's front.
I lean over too. There's 2 I really like tonight. I made a video earlier this week, and this Garrett Schrader rushing prop was actually one of them. With the volume he's getting on the ground, we're talking at least 16 carries in 3 straight games. If he has any semblance of efficiency, we're talking like 3 yards per carry, he eclipses this mark. And they're not passing a ton in Syracuse. Their run rate is even higher right now. It doesn't matter game script. They're only passing just above 30% of the time. And with Garrett Schrader taking all of these rush attempts, I think there's a very good chance he eclipses the number here. The other one I really like is North Texas quarterback Austin Onn, who's significantly underprojected here, just 174.5 passing yards. He's projected kind of like the timeshare player he was earlier in the year, but he has firmly beat out Jace Rutter as the full-time quarterback here. And North Texas is one of the fastest offenses in the entire country. 86 plays per game. They're balanced. They pass the ball 47% of the time. Austin Onn should backdoor his way into like a 250-yard passing game. And that's currently around where his projection is for us at Awesemo.com. And you can get him at 175. This reminds me of the Dustin Crum prop last week, which was like 190 yards and Crum threw for 400.
I was thinking about that when you were talking, because these are the teams, and this is why I love PrizePicks. You're going to get props on under the radar teams that nobody, in the general public has even heard of. And those are the softest lines. The Kent State quarterback, he eclipsed that basically instantly. I watched that game, as shameful as that is to say. And certainly North Texas tonight, that game's got the highest total of the 4. We could see some fireworks. Let's dive into it. We've got Clemson 13.5 point favorites. They're at Cuse, 44-point total, so very methodical. I did the show with Eitan today on the Awesemo Odds channel. You can always go check that out. And we did talk a little college football. And our chat, which I love, the majority of people on there were on Syracuse. A lot of people are down on Clemson. A lot of people are saying this offense can't manufacture enough points. So let's start there. We know they're not making the playoff. We know it's a lost season. But what remains from this team, starting with their quarterback and these pass catchers on the outside?
They still want to win games. I think there's hope for them to maybe get to like an ACC championship, even with some of the losses they have. I don't think teams like Wake Forest are going to end up undefeated. So I do still think they're playing for something. Of course, they probably want to get to a good bowl game too. So Clemson, I think, will come out competitive, especially how they've been embarrassed early this year. Seeing the spread under 2 touchdowns is really surprising to me. You have a Syracuse team firmly rebuilding, and you have Clemson, a team that recruits almost exclusively 4 and 5 stars. So just like out of principle, I can't back Syracuse against this Clemson team. If you had Clemson playing an even somewhat competitive slate of games this year, they would be like 21 to 28 point favorites. So with Clemson, I think the story is they've been so wildly inefficient on offense. They're running essentially the same scheme as last year, passing the ball at a 50% clip, but their plays per game have dropped all the way down to 63. They just have not been able to sustain drives whatsoever, which has been a huge concern for them. And it's pretty shocking considering what we saw out of Uiagalelei last year, where he went over 300 yards in each of his 2 games. And now he's averaging just north of 150 passing yards per game. I think there's a chance to buy low on him. Syracuse defense definitely doesn't scare you. People won't go to Uiagalelei, I think, because of what he's shown earlier in the year. So maybe there's some potential leverage to be had if Clemson can blow out Syracuse, which is what you typically would expect. It's just not what we've seen this year and what we're not seeing from bookmakers.
Yeah, I'm a little freaked out by the spread. I'm not going to bet Clemson. There's no chance, but it looks like I'm trending towards not doing anything for the game. If you do go to the Clemson signal caller, who on the outside, could produce with him? Who are you looking to pair him up with?
Justin Ross and Joseph Nada are the clear 1-2 options for this team. I would try to get to one of them. Nada being cheaper, he kind of allows you to get some of the studs in lineups, which we definitely want to do today. And Nada has more receiving yards on the year, just been really efficient with his volume. He is averaging less targets per game than Ross. And I think this could be even worse if Ross didn't sustain a concussion in their most recent contest. He only had 2 targets there. Right now you have Ross with a 5 target average over Nada. But overall, I'm comfortable getting to both. On FanDuel, Nada is a significantly better play than Ross. He's just more cheap over there, like even more cheaper over there, which is pretty ridiculous. And the rest of the Clemson pass catchers are a little difficult to decipher because of injuries. It's tonight, they're going to be without their tight end, Galloway. EJ Williams is out. Frank Ladson is still questionable. We haven't gotten a clear picture on what he's going to be doing tonight, if he's going to play at all. That opens up some opportunity for Bo Collins, a player who hasn't played much at all this year. And at tight end, you'll see Davis Allen and Jalen Lay split most of the work there. But I'm interested in Bo Collins at the minimum if Frank Ladson is in fact out.
In the backfield, Will Shipley, of course, goes down. Kobe Pace, 5,600 on DraftKings, 9,000 over on FanDuel. Where does he rank, and is that someone you're looking to target tonight?
Yeah, the running backs are really strong tonight. I think there's 4 really good plays, and there's 6 players that are going to see a massive workload. Pace is kind of 4th in line for me as far as price-adjusted plays and rankings here. Pace is somebody who came up with the 18 carries in their last game. And Phil Maffa, the only other player that touched the ball, had 8. I think it's going to remain the same. I still think there's a chance that Maffa is redshirted this year. He's a player that was reportedly on track for a redshirt prior to the Will Shipley injury and the Lynn J. Dixon. He entered the transfer portal midseason. So it looks like Pace is going to be seeing a vast majority of the work to start this game and probably through the rest of the year. So he's somebody I think you can look to as a solid price adjusted play.
On the other side, we already talked about Garrett Trader a little when we were talking about PrizePicks. He's mobile. That's probably his best asset at this point. He's probably going to be running for his life in some of these elements, but he does have a guy in the backfield who you mentioned massive workloads. Sean Tucker, I mean, they could push him for 30 carries again if it's competitive. Where do you go with a guy like this against Clemson's front, and where does he stack up amongst all the running backs tonight?
he is elite opportunity. The issue is there's a lot of backs that have the same opportunity as him tonight. And he comes down to a player at his price where can you sacrifice the salary to get up to him over players like DeAndre Torrey and some of the other backs that have a similar workload in their range. I don't think you can, especially in low risk and cash environments. Tucker's the guy that just kind of gets left out the way pricing works tonight, but you can certainly play him in GPPs. He's averaging 25 touches a game, 134 yards on the ground strictly, another 33 through the air. He gets a tough matchup against Clemson, and they're definitely going to be keying on him and Schrader. They don't have a lot in their receiving game with Taj Harris opting out. But overall, Tucker becomes kind of a casualty based on price in cash games, but he's definitely viable in tournaments.
Anyone on the outside before we move on?
I don't think you really want to target a lot of these guys outside of GPPs. Maybe if running a Clemson stack, you run it back with an Anthony Quealy or Courtney Jackson. Sherrod Johnson is now splitting time like 50-50 with Devon Cooper. I wouldn't target either of them, even though they're really cheap. I would probably rather get to like Bo Collins on the Clemson side or some other cheaper players we'll talk about. But there are worse options. And as far as Schrader goes, he is just seeing such a heavy volume in the run game. It has siphoned a little bit of work off from Tucker. He just doesn't throw enough to really warrant a lot of consideration. So I would rather play somebody cheaper than Schrader outside of tournaments. And to the Frank Ladson thing, someone said he's out in the chat. That has not been confirmed yet. I double checked, no word on Frank Ladson yet.
The other thing for Chad, and I want to hear, obviously, I will defer to you. To me, it's very close. This is one of the few nights where I think double QB is a little thin, but I still think more often than not, you want to find a way to get two QBs in your lineup still.
Yeah, I ran some optimals before the show, 2 QBs. Still the best option, but it's a lot closer. I was getting 4 RBs, not too far down the line. So I think in tournaments, you can do it for sure.
Yeah, it's close. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say an outside consideration in cash.
Yeah, just a weird night in that regard. Let's keep it moving. This is probably the best game to target. We've got Marshall. We've got North Texas. 11-point spread, 66-point total. These are the teams that I would say, I mean, I sent you before the show, I have seen a lot of college football. Not sure I've seen these teams too often making my way. So talk about, let's start with this Marshall side. They look like they throw the ball a decent amount, expected to put up a healthy amount of points tonight. What do we do with the Thundering Herd?
Yeah, their offense is a little different this year. They had some changes on their coaching staff. Last year, they were quite run heavy and a little bit slower. This year, they're almost the exact opposite. They're running more plays than average. They're at 74 per game, passing at a 56% clip. All that benefits basically the pass catchers in the pass game overall, where we want to focus a lot of our energy. And it's a Marshall team that's 3-3. They haven't been getting killed in games either. The games they've lost have also been pretty close. They played East Carolina, App State, and Middle Tennessee. So those are some pretty good teams. Grant Wells doesn't offer a lot as a dual threat, but this extra volume has been fantastic for his DFS fantasy production, whatever you want to call it this year. He's averaging 329 yards per game in over 40 attempts. So similar to like a Will Rogers, he's going to backdoor his way into a lot of really productive games. And then you have the fact that this game overall has a 66.5-point total, clearly the best on the board. And Marshall is an 11-point favorite. So they have nearly a 40-point implied team total. Grant Wells is the safest quarterback on the slate. I don't think he is necessary, but he is the safest in my opinion.
On the outside, you've got Gamage, you've got Ahmed. How do you rank up the pass catchers for Marshall? Clearly, they make for great pairings with Wells.
They do. Players at all price points. Gamage is their alpha this year. He's averaging 10 targets per game over their last 4, nearly 86 receiving yards per game. He's somebody you can look to with confidence and probably just the straight up best receiver play, not factoring in price or anything on the entire slate. Shadid Ahmed has seen an increased role lately as 10 targets in back-to-back games. Willie Johnson, he's somebody who's averaging 6.8 targets per game in their last 4. These players are all heavily involved and at different price points. I'm going to have Grant Wells with at least 2 pass catching options. And I think you can mix and match if you're playing multiple lineups, just depending on how the salary works with the rest of your lineup. Xavier Gaines is another player worth mentioning. He's their like hyper athletic tight end. The previous coach used him a lot as even like a ball carrier. So he's like an H-back sort of tight end hybrid. He hasn't been targeted as much, but he actually led their team in receiving for a large portion of last year. He's somebody I think is a buy low. And he's actually third on the team in receiving this year, even though he has not been targeted as much. Just a big play threat.
And then you've got Rasheen Ali, who looks like he can catch the ball a little, obviously getting a lot of work on the ground. Is he cash viable? And again, I'm going to ask you this pretty much for every team. Where does he stack up against Tucker and these other guys who are also getting massive workloads?
I think he's a top 2 back, top 3. He's a player that has a very similar workload to Sean Tucker, 21.5 touches per game. And he's in just a much, much better game environment. North Texas is allowing nearly 200 yards on the ground rushing. You have Marshall as an 11-point favorite with a 66.5 point total overall. So matchup works in his favor, unlike Tucker, who's working in a very difficult matchup. And then you have everything from pace, projected game script. This all works in Ali's favor. And I think he's somewhat independent of game script here too. Very active in the pass game, averaging nearly 4 targets per game over their last 4. Ali is a firm cash play.
On the other side, you've got a North Texas team that wants to play hyper fast. How do you think they attack? They could easily be playing from behind. What does that do to their, production on the offensive side?
This is a team that has been very productive. And I think part of it just because of their pace, like you mentioned, but they're also a team that's balanced. I like that. They have a fantastic matchup. Like Marshall has been a fairly good team this year, but they've just been hemorrhaging production on the ground. They're allowing 241 rushing yards per game. And I think that's something North Texas is going to try to exploit, even if they do get down early with DeAndre Torrey. And DeAndre Torrey has another workload very similar to Sean Tucker. It's actually right there. He's averaging 25 touches per game, 114 strictly on the ground. He's somewhat involved in the pass game. He has 12 targets on the year. That comes out to about 3 targets per game over their last 4. He will be involved even if they're down in games. No other running back on the team has more than 5 targets overall. So I'm very comfortable with DeAndre Torrey. I think he's the single best price-adjusted running back you can play on tonight's slate.
Anything else you want to talk about from North Texas on the outside, or do you think it's Torrey and then a reasonable drop-off to the rest of these guys?
I think you can play a lot of guys in this game. Like even North Texas is a 28-point implied team total. Austin On is a lot better than Rudder for DFS. He's very mobile. He has 119 yards, and he's basically only started 1 game this year. He's played situationally in others. But Austin On is now, as long as he retains the clear starting job, and again, Rudder didn't play it all in the last game, so we're expecting On to handle all the snaps. He's now going to benefit from a team that's running 86 plays per game, and his mobility keeps him viable even at a cheaper price. Like I think he's a straight up better price adjusted play than either Uiagalelei and Schrader, just based on raw projections. He's super easy to stack now too, kind of due to injury attrition. Jair Shorter, he's hurt. They kicked Deontay Simpson off the team. He got arrested on Monday, I believe, so he's gone. That leaves he's gone. So now they have Roderick Burns as their clear alpha receiver. He's averaging 10.3 targets per game over their last 4 contests. And he's 5,700 too. He's not expensive whatsoever. Slides right into your builds here. The preferred run back and easy stacking option if you're using On. The wide receiver 2 is now Bryson Jackson. As long as he returns, he was banged up, so watch him. Injuries are a little bit of a concern with him. But then they also, if he's out, they have Damon Ward. They have Zagiel McMillan. These are the next guys up on the depth chart. None of them are expensive. So I think you can play any of them. And even Jason Pirtle, their tight end, we should mention him. He's averaging 4.5 targets per game over their last 4.
Really good game environment. Obviously, like you said, easy run back, stackability, checks a lot of boxes. The next game does pretty much none of that. You got San Diego State, who is undefeated. Credit to them, 10-point favorites. Going into San Jose State, 41.5 point total. San Jose State, I really don't know. I'm interested to see what you have to say about that when we get to them. But let's start with San Diego State. Obviously, it's not a high octane offense, but they do get the job done. How bad are they for this slate? And are there some guys on their team worth targeting?
Yeah, I think so. Brookshire is extremely underwhelming. I think you just play Austin On at the same price range, or you go down and play like Nick Nash. We'll get to him. So Brookshire is kind of out of play, not really, like his volume is just so low, and he's not very mobile. He's somewhat mobile, but 19 attempts per game, just not going to get it done. San Diego State is one of the highest run rates in the country for a non-triple option team. Greg Bell has an immense workload. He's up there with Sean Tucker in terms of price. You do save like $1,300 by going to Greg Bell, and he has an immense workload. The problem is none of it comes through the air. He has 97 touches on the year. Only 3 of them are targets. So Greg Bell would have to punch in like multiple touchdowns in order to eclipse just the raw target volume that guys like DeAndre Torrey and Rasheen Ali are going to see. So Bell is he's in the tier, but he's at the bottom of it, similar to Tucker, where his thing is price. Greg Bell's is going to be no pass game work whatsoever. If you do want to take a pass catcher, some of them did pop in some optimals, and that's just because of pure price. Like their target leader, Jesse Matthews, he's only 3,200. And then Tyrell Shavers, the transfer coming in, he didn't play to start the year, but now he's back for their last 3 games. He's averaging 4.3 targets in their last 4 games, but he's only 3,500. I would rather play some of the cheap guys like from North Texas who are going to play more due to injuries and suspensions, or take like Xavier Gaines for Marshall. But if you do want to take a contrarian approach, these guys will be completely unowned.
On the other side of this game, step one, because they've always kind of used 2 QBs until Starkle got hurt. Is he definitely out tonight?
They have not updated his status at all. So I would watch pregame just to make sure, but it doesn't appear like he's going to be back anytime soon. But again, we just don't know. They refuse to comment on whether Starkle is coming back or not. But in his place, like Nick Nash had been playing pure receiver for this team, kind of like a John Rice Plumlee. Like they were literally using him out wide and in the slot as a full-time player. And then Starkle went down, so they converted him back to quarterback, a position he played more last year, and didn't run any routes. So Nick Nash is now firmly a quarterback again. I imagine if Starkle plays, they'll put Nick Nash back at receiver. But Nash is a really fun player, especially for DFS, because he's so mobile. He's like Rise Plumlee, where he has that like elite mobility and athleticism. He does leave a lot to be desired from just a raw passing perspective. And I expect them to increase their run rate with him under center, just because that is his skill set. Like San Jose State is passing 56% of the time on the year. That should be lower with Nick Nash. And they're already a really slow team. With Nash, if you play him, you're just basically hoping that he gets a lot of rushing production and punches in some touchdowns, because it's a really, really bad game environment for him. I mean, they're not even implied for 16 points.
Yeah, really tough spot. I do think they're going to play all right tonight. I might look to bet them, but from a DFS side, just not a lot to say. And if it is Nash under center, it really does hurt the output of these skill position guys on the outside. Anything quickly about Tyler Nevins?
It's like a 50-50 timeshare, except Nevins is the guy that's like their bruiser back. He sees more volume on the ground, and Kyrie Robinson's their pure pass catcher. Think of it like a Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard timeshare, where they both play like nearly the same amount, but Nevins has a clear path to carries, but no passing game involvement. So that kind of cannibalizes them both in this poor game environment.
Last game up, and if we got a little time, we'll take some questions while I'm talking about that. If you could hit the like button, show the support on a Friday night, spending some time with us. We really do appreciate it. Get some good vibes before lock tomorrow morning, as we always do, 11 to 12 Eastern. Same place. I'm going to say same time. That's just brutally inaccurate. Let's go to this final game. We've got Cal, 13.5-point dogs. They're going into Oregon. Tough spot, 54-point total. Cal's a team that they're just bad. I really am not a fan of this team. I'm not going to lie. Talk to me about Garbers, their quarterback. What are they going to try to do to put up some points tonight and keep pace with Oregon?
Cal is somewhat friendly for DFS, even in games they're down, because they throw the ball so much, 54% pass rate. And Garbers is mobile. He's 191 cumulative rushing yards this year, including the 12 sacks he's already taken. So Garbers, he can scramble out there, something we definitely like for DFS. And at his price, he did pop in a lot of the optimals here. It's a lot of Garbers, it's a lot of Austin On, and it's a lot of Grant Wells. So I'm comfortable getting to him, and I don't think you need to stack him. But the run game's a disaster. When you have 6 really good running backs, just ignore the Cal backs. I don't even know who the clear lead back is at this point. They like basically benched Damian Moore after he fumbled. And then in the pass game, their wide receiver 1 and 2 have shifted. It's now Kekoa Crawford and Trayvon Clark working ahead of Nico Remigio. That is reflected in price. I would be trying to get to Clark and Remigio over anyone else. Jake Tongs is like their tight end if you want to purely punt, but I would suggest you don't do that.
On the other side, where does Anthony Brown come in terms of your priorities at QB?
He's just too expensive. He's not a very good passer. Their offense is low volume for the passing attack, and he has like the same mobility as Garbers. He's like a game manager scrambler like Garbers is. No upside with him as a rusher or a passer. He would just have to get there with touchdowns.
Travis Dye takes over after CJ Verdell goes down. I mean, he's in the ultimate spot. It seems like how cash viable, tournament everything viable. How much is too much?
Yeah, he's a core play, I would say. top 3 back, without a doubt, active in the pass game. Not enough good things to say about Travis Dye. They're going to use a 3-way timeshare at backup, but I would think Byron Cardwell is the main backup.
Anything on the outside?
Their target leader, Johnny Johnson, is 19 targets on the year. Tough scene if you're stacking Anthony Brown. I would recommend going to the Marshall North Texas game, but I would rank them Johnny Johnson, Jalen Redd, and then probably Micah Pittman.
They really do have so many guys on the outside. It's
they
kind of
use
crazy.
Like 6 or 7 receivers.
Yeah, it's just tough. And I do think tonight we're going to see Oregon really just lean on Travis Dye and get it done. And once Thibodeau comes back in the second half, they're going to put some heat on him. Appreciate the super chat, Sammy, friend of the network, friend of the show. We appreciate that. All right, let's get to some questions. Then we'll bounce on out of here. We'll go throw them in there, chat, if you've got them. In terms of North Texas, is it okay to play On and Torrey together?
Yes.
I would agree. Best min price receiver. Is there anyone in terms of savings that we could look to?
At the Stone min, it's probably like one of the North Texas receivers. So Zagiel McMillan or Bo Collins for Clemson. There's a lot of guys right above the min. At the Stone min, I think those are the 2.
These are 2 of maybe the 2 best plays on the slate. Do you have a preference between Torrey or Dye?
Torrey.
So you have him basically as the priority on the slate?
Yes. The top, like I'm playing, there's 3 minutes to lock. I'm playing Torrey, Ali, and Dye in cash.
Yeah. And that's kind of how you're building around. When you look at Oregon, and we talked about this just briefly, do you think there's any merit in tournaments to getting someone else who could carry the ball? Or do you think Dye consolidates so much there's just not enough room behind him?
We actually saw this a bit last year, and Dye still handled a lot of work. So I'm not really that concerned. If you were going to a backup, it would be Cardwell. But honestly, I think this is more viable with Clemson than it is with Oregon. We saw Clemson give Maffa a pretty decent amount of work.
All right, couple rapid fires here. We got Torrey or Pace at running back.
Torrey. Pace is number 4 for me. Like the top 3 I'm playing in cash are where I want to go. Pace is number 4.
Ali Ahmed or Torrey Gamage?
Torrey Gamage.
I would agree. Let's see. We got Wells, Ahmed, and Garbers, or Uagalele, Gamage, and On in DK cash.
I would play the latter with the Uagalele and On.
Yeah, that's close. I would also lean the latter. I don't really like Uagalele, but I do think I have a funny feeling Clemson's going to play kind of good tonight. But
Uagalele is a pretty good rusher. That's why I'm okay with him. He's got decent mobility.
He does. And we saw flashes last year in particular, but Pittman or Gaines for a cheapie?
Gaines.
Did you bet? I meant to ask you this. We have a 4-game slate here. Did you bet any of these 4 games?
I took San Diego State on Monday, so I have it -8. So it's not really it's not great to take tonight. I would not take it at the current line.
No, I lean to the other side of that, but it's a perfect segue to just quickly say, if you don't join us on Wednesdays, give us a listen. Podcast networks anywhere, betting you. Me and Matt break down all the games, and this is where we create a lot of value. You've mentioned a ton of spreads this week, and I look at the closing lines on Saturday, and we've stole a couple points. It's a huge edge. If you enjoy college football, betting you, that podcast is available on our podcast network. All right, Collins or Jackson in cash as the 3K punt without Ladson news?
Collins.
Final question here. A wide receiver under 5.6.
Under 5.6? Oh, man. There's a ton of them. So you can't play Roderick Burns. That sucks. I would probably say Willie Johnson.
Okay. It's amazing. No matter what I throw you, you have a pretty good answer for all of it. And that's why
I think Willie Johnson's the best play, but it sucks because he's 4,500. But when you miss 56, or you have to do 56, you literally miss Roderick Burns at 57.
I think we've done some good work here. 10 seconds to lock. The most important point of the whole show. Give some support and love to our new producer, Awesemo. You see him in chat all the time. He is the man behind the glass tonight. Did a great job here. We'll certainly be seeing more of him. And good luck, everyone. We're going to bounce on out of here. A 4-game slate, but join us tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll be breaking down the full Saturday slate here. Good luck, everyone. Hit that like button on your way out. And again, thanks for joining us here at Awesemo.com.